Egypt was totally different. For example, in Egyptian maps, the very top of the map will be south. Why south? Because the river Nile, the source of life to Egypt, is flowing in from the south. And that means it's coming from above. If you would see a map made by the Phoenicians, they were trading with the Mediterranean. That means their point of reference was west. And therefore, there was no standard way of making maps. But since we speak about the Bible, we need to understand clearly what was the logic behind the directions given in the scriptures. Let's keep this one, please, and go to the other one. I do have a laser pointer someplace over here. If it's working, I'm going to use that. Well, we do need to set the scene. And to set the scene, this is a blank map of, let's call it the Middle East, although biblically it's definitely a wrong term. But we'll use the Middle East because this is a term that we all understand much better today, but it has nothing to do with biblical days. And the first thing to understand is to bring up the maps, and it all goes automatically. Just one look at the map will tell you some very important data and information. That the Middle East has a lot of big water sources. On one hand side, on the east, you see the river Tigris and the river Euphrates, and the area in between is called Mesopotamia, which simply means the place between the rivers. By the way, today, the Tigris flows into the Euphrates someplace over here, and only one river makes it to this area, which is the Persian Gulf. But back then, the shores were about 100 miles further southeast, and that's why you see two rivers over there. On the other side, you have the river Nile, right over there. These two rivers would carry nearly 70 billion cubic meters of water every year. It's a huge amount of water. The river Nile, just the Nile, carries the same amount of water. That means that most people that lived in, let's call it the biblical world, lived along the rivers. They didn't have any other choice, they had to. And therefore, the two massive concentrations of population was one here between the Tigris and the Euphrates, and the other one was along the Nile. Let's bring in the term empire for a minute. What would be the criteria to take a group of people under one ruler and create an empire? If I'd ask you today, the answer should be, by the way, not the size and not the number of people. It should be technology. If a small nation has nuclear weapons, it would be far more important than its sizes or population. This was not the criteria back then. It was all in the numbers. If you can gather enough people to form an army, to go to do battle, you will conquer the world. And where did most people live? Most people lived along the main water sources. And therefore, that's where the empires of the ancient world were created. Assyria and Babylon and Egypt, simply because there was enough water. But water is not enough. If you